with each principle that they do is they think about the policy that you have to have, the training for staff that you were mentioning, and then what you do with the client and internal control. Because all these aspects, they go into ensuring success of the new change you're doing. So one is I would encourage you to look at the SMART campaign. Fintech Protects, I think they're still to publish, but if you'd like, we can meet up later. I can tell you about some of the ideas that we are thinking of recommending the SMART campaign on what to have when a person using a mobile banking application, so they make a responsible decision. And of course for trainings as well, you said it's equally important to bring up the staff to the part, because even what we see is when the loan officer, incentivized by cross sales, loan officer will sell the loan and they will say, okay, we have a mobile banking application, would you like to sign up? Yeah, that is cross sales, because that's a bonus they will get for this. And then there is an old retired lady in front of him, and this lady, she's very kind and she's very nice and she really likes the loan officer. And so of course she will help him and she will say, yes, I will sign up. And so you have this huge number of mobile banking accounts that are not used, just as a huge number of plastic cards that are actually not used. And that is because the first step of selling is there, but the second step of helping to use it is not there. And when you ask the institution and you say, okay, well, how did you define that the person can use the software, which is one of the principles of SMART campaign, they say, well, you know, in the mobile banking there is a video training on how to use it. But maybe this old lady will not get to that step. I mean, the first step is to explain how to use it and to promote it before pushing the button. So I think this is a very complex question that you have asked. I'm not an expert, but if you'd like, I'll give you my card and we can meet and I can show you some of the resources that you can start looking at to make it more responsible.
Thank you. And one more question to the right regarding the M-Pesa. Of course, we are reading a lot of articles or use cases of the M-Pesa and it's kind of best practice in Kenya. But can you share, if you know, of course, some kind of lessons learned or some failures that M-Pesa caused or some risks that it has during this launch, maybe regulatory risk, or maybe kind of from the customer side? Because everyone is saying how M-Pesa is good and it's really good, it has a lot of advantages and it's boosting economy of the Kenya. But can you share some other side of this product, or how we need to be, how we need to not make the same mistakes on the way of launching people?
Yeah, so I think first of all I would recommend the paper that I wrote summarizes this. It's 20 plus pages long, so I couldn't possibly summarize it. So I think it has a lot more detail in there. Basically the second half of that paper is about, I think, some of the shortfalls of the Kenyan ecosystem more broadly. I'm personally not sure, I think that M-Pesa itself is, like I said, I look at it as a platform for launching other things. And I personally don't have a lot of criticisms of M-Pesa as a platform. What I think criticisms are more of is the ecosystem itself, I think, was developed in a haphazard way, that there's significant gaps in there. And specifically, I talk about it in the paper. Seth and I had a conversation about it before the event tonight. The managerial and entrepreneurial skills in Kenya. There have been a number of startups that have been successful in that ecosystem that were started by expatriates, North Americans and Europeans who have moved there. There have been a few successful Kenyan startups that have gotten to a scale of a successful startup, but they're not to a scale of millions of dollars in revenue type of a thing. It's similar to what Evgeny talked about the economic considerations. And I think an open question here, more broadly for Kyrgyzstan, is how can Kyrgyzstan support companies that can grow to such a scale that we're creating large-scale job opportunities for folks in this market or Central Asia, or does that include wider markets? And I think that the answer to that question will drive a lot of the considerations for a payment platform, and those things. As Seth mentioned, that this is meant to be a series of discussions about fintech, and I think that that's an issue that is probably a great topic for potentially for the future talk.
I should recap here. I'm making a note here. Barriers to use. Users don't have the skills to use fintech, both businesses and consumers, which I think gets to the question. And just going back, need for fintech in Kyrgyzstan. There is, in fact, disagree if you want to argue, low penetration of some banking services, particularly I think in the regions, and we need a delivery channel to get them further out into the regions. And then the comment was that AI requires a lot of data, and then I asked, is everybody using cash? No, you're not. So there's a lot of data being generated, so this should not be a barrier, at least in the future as we keep moving away from cash.
Maybe also add a question about Kenya.
You may?
Just to, maybe it would be interesting for you. So, and I'm sure you have more to say, but I think for Kyrgyzstan it's particularly interesting because we don't have a good working example similar to M-Pesa. So an alternative is similar like to ENG, but ENG is tied to bank account, I think. But anyhow, the idea is that you load up money someplace virtual, like on your phone, and then you have to take back the cash. So one of the issues with M-Pesa is liquidity. So let's say you went to Surikta, or you went to Kızıladır, or you went to Albaşı, and you need to pay the loan, so you need to pay 30,000 SOM, and you have this money on your account, but you need people in that very village to have that money to give it to you. And that is one of the issues that M-Pesa has is with agents, liquidity of agents. And I think that one is interesting for us to explore in Kyrgyzstan because we got used to loading up money into a payment terminal. So payment terminals are quite spread here. And so we are used to with this idea of putting it into a payment terminal. But taking the cash out, right now it's only banks providing the service. It's the ATM machines. So if you are talking about EXOM, we would like to get money out of EXOM. Yeah, you can load up money to EXOM, you can make the payment, but if you want to take the cash out, and I am a seller and I got all this money, that is, I think, a very bigger challenge for our region. And even in PSA, they have this issue with agent liquidity, but they already have agents in place. For us, we don't even have these agents who can give out the cash.
Thank you. I forgot a point that you made, which was an issue with M-Pesa was the ecosystem was not fully thought out. And so I think what you're saying to us, if we're going to do something similar, think through the ecosystem. I just want to make a note of that one. New question, please.
So my question is to Ryan. So as I see Wikipedia, so definition of fintech. So what is the definition of fintech? It's providing financial. So it's like is new technology and innovation aim to compete with traditional financial methods in delivery of financial services. So it means that how you working in the bank, implementing this fintech concept. So to change the delivery channel, because actually all the banks is using like very straightforward sale of products. No any innovation, no any like adding value. And this is my first question. And another question about this.
Let's do one at a time.
Just comment about this liquidity.
Okay.
So my comment about the liquidity in the agents. If we are going to fintech, so it means we are working around cashless economy. So if you are producing agents with liquidity, it means, so why do we need the fintech? So in this case, just give the cash and no fintech. So I think we should skip this liquidity issue and go just straightforward with the cashless economy.
So let me take the first question. I may need you to repeat the second one, but we'll come back to that. And I think I'm under some limitations about what I can and can't talk about here. But I will say the trend that I talked about the unbundling of banking, it is something that firmly has the attention of the large banks, especially as we see the amount of funding that some of the startups are getting. There's a lot of debate and analysis that goes on internally about do we follow, to Farida's point. This startup is growing aggressively with this product. Do we go and copy what they're doing? Or I think where we come out, particularly in Seattle, we are a very customer-driven organization, and I think it starts with that understanding what that problem is, and then going back and analyzing the market and saying, well, is what is being produced actually the right thing to be building to solve that customer problem? And we have uncovered cases where there are moderately successful startups in the space, but we feel that they're missing the customer need, and we've gone and built some things and tested some things out, and we're in progress with a few products in that space. So I think having the ability and agility within a large bank to build, test, create, and iterate on new products is something that's incredibly important today in this fintech regime that we're under.
Show of hands, how many of you are working on unbundling banking?
What does it mean?
It means taking all the range of services that banks offer, lending, savings accounts, financial statements, credit cards, all these things, picking one of them and doing it better than the bank can do it.
We all work in the banks.
No way.
That doesn't mean, didn't you listen to Steve Jobs? You have to learn how to eat your children. You have to cannibalize yourself. This is something, of course, we learned at Hewlett-Packard. If companies are coming, startups are coming, and they're inventing better solutions, if you don't kill your service and make a better one, you could be run out of business. I mean, exaggerating. But I would hope that all banks are looking at this possibility. I don't know much about it, but I can, all right, give you an example. Revolut. Everybody know Revolut? Okay, so I met this guy this summer, and he is opening the office for Revolut in Italy for the whole country. It's the company's headquartered in London. It's got 500 employees, and they have a card, but you don't have to have the card, onto which you can have different accounts in different currencies. So I could have a Som account, a ruble account, a dollar account, and a euro account. And if I'm traveling, I just click which account I want to use, and then I pay in that currency. I have to put money on the card. It's not magic. It doesn't connect into my accounts automatically. I have to put money into each account. But I can move the money between the accounts for no transaction fee. Whatever the current exchange rate is, that's the interbank rate, that's what I pay. So I can have a multi-currency card, and I can move money to friends. I can do that kind of stuff. So this is an example. Banks exchange currencies. They charge a lot of money for it in many cases. Here's a company that's come along and they've grabbed that and they're doing it better than the banks are doing it. So why would I want to exchange money with my bank? Don't use them anymore. Bank loses all that business. So that's an example. How did I get there? You asked the question. Yes. Did we answer your question, or are we moving? And then you get your second question? I forgot.
So,
Sorry?
I said I don't believe I answered the second
Oh,
question.
you didn't get to the second question. So the other question I had to do, there was this question, I think you said,
Yes. Do we need liquidity if you go into fintech?
I'm not sure I can answer that for Kyrgyzstan. I'll be upfront and truthful about that. You know, in the world that we exist right now, I do think that liquidity, you know, it goes back to one of the issues I talked about in PESA was trust. There's always going to be folks who just don't trust the system, who want to take money and put it under their mattress. People need the security of liquidity. So, you know, the statistic I think that Seth and I chatted about today, the last I heard of M-Pesa, there were 6 times as many transactions in M-Pesa as there were in cash in Kenyan society. But there still are cash transactions. I'm not saying, you know, that's the end state for Kyrgyzstan, but I do still think that liquidity is an issue that needs to be thought through and considered.
next question.
Can I answer about maybe? Can I share my opinion about? Can I share my opinion about the unbundling of the banking?
About the
About this last one, unbundling or something like that. As I understand, it's making something better than banks do now, yeah? And about, if we talk about that the cryptocurrencies, some of the, for example, the transactions now in the currency are still in the cryptocurrencies. For example, we have examples when they buy cars or houses in Bitcoin. And this one is also one of the examples of unbundling the banking. We have some companies which are already accepting Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what the laws say, but they are still now accepting Bitcoin. We have some groups in Telegram and other messengers where they buy and trading that cryptocurrencies. It's also one of the examples of I think unbundling of the banks. We have for example, maybe we, I don't know, but maybe we have the credits in Bitcoin. It's also one of the new, using examples of using new technologies in Kyrgyzstan. It's real for now.
Provide loans with cryptocurrency, that a person can take a loan with cryptocurrency.
No, I mean that, for example, I can borrow as a credit, I can take Bitcoins or something like that. It's one of the examples of unbundling of the banking.
Yep. Cryptocurrencies, exchange rate, these are some examples of unbundling.
We have also, for example, for example, not related with the blockchain, but we have app coins. Some app coins, I mean coins in applications or something like points in applications. For example, when we can, for example, we have application of one company who provide selling the cakes, and you have points there. You can buy from that points the cakes or something like that. App coins, application coins.
Question, yes.
Can you give examples of fintech in stock market?
Yeah, that was the thinking out there. I'll give a couple here that come to mind. So I talked earlier about robo-investing. If you are interested in digging further, the 2 biggest names in that are Betterment and Wealthfront right now. what they're doing again is optimizing portfolios of investing. It's taking away the need to have a financial advisor who can say to you, based on your current financial situation, this